So I think there was a lack of understanding as to what the agreement actually meant. Then you coupled that with two of the three who were not in favor of it. Um, After we listened to numerous public input, who I believe that they were nothing more than activists, and what they spoke out against was not truly what the agreement was. But these two council people became very emotional, and they made a decision based on driven by their emotions rather than data and information and facts. Honestly, I was embarrassed for our city. Um, I believe the residents of our city want leadership that is strong, that can listen to the difficult issues and make decisions. I have done so in the past where I initially voted one way, was given more information, obtained more facts, and said, okay, now this makes sense. I'm switching my vote. And I stood up and I said, I'm changing my vote, and here's why. And I took the hits. People, oh, you're flip-flopping. Well, call it what you want, but I'm taking the information I have and I'm making the best decision for the city. And I think, when we make a mistake, we need to own it. All right. So they're saying they weren't informed. Now they're better informed. Um, what was sad with most of the people who spoke at the second meeting, of 51 of them, only 16 of them actually live in the city of Fort Myers. We had people from Miami, from other counties. Look, I'm all about giving people the opportunity to speak, but my commitment is to the residents of the city of Fort Myers, not to the people who live outside the city. There's not going to be a task force created to go out there and seek out undocumented people. That's not, we don't have the resources to do that. And we're not going to take those resources away from protecting our community as a whole. Again, this is just another tool. So what will look different is they will have the ability to process people in that category differently. So let me give you an example. So Officer A gets certified through the ICE program. Once he or she is certified, they go through the training, they go back to whatever their assignment was. So let's say in this case, it was a patrol officer assignment. So they go back to being patrol officer, nothing changes until an officer comes in contact with someone they believe to be undocumented or illegal. Um, and normally this will occur through some type of criminal activity or behavior or an investigation. It could come as a traffic stop or some other ways, but for the most part, it's going to be due to criminal activity. That officer now can call the officer A and say, hey, I believe I have an undocumented person here. That officer can now respond and assist and have access to ICE's database and be able to confirm whether or not this person is documented, undocumented, or if there's a warrant on them. Whereas in the past, we didn't have the ability to do that. We would take care of whatever the criminal issue was, and then either they got booked into the jail or they got let loose. Well, now if it turns out that the person is undocumented and or has a warrant, now they can start the process for deportation. We've invested heavily in our police department and technology to keep the city safe. So I was embarrassed that we were thrust not only into the national spotlight, but the international spotlight. We're trying to promote this city as a great place to be. And things like this don't necessarily help. The last thing you want is to have the governor and the attorney general at odds with your city. That's not a good thing. And then you look at the fact that we currently have, and while it's not about the money, it is about the money. Because we currently have about $362 million worth of grant applications out there waiting for review and approval. These are dollars that are critical to us accomplishing our mission to grow this city in the right way. Some of the grant dollars are for projects that are going to happen regardless if we get the grant money or not, which means if we lose the grant money, then it's going to have to come out of general funds, and we're going to either have to raise taxes or do without something else. So that's a real negative impact toward our city and our taxpayers. I felt that we did in fact create a de facto sanctuary city, not in the fact that we were saying, hey, our doors are open, give us your tires, your port, everybody come to Fort Myers. No, not to that extent, but to the extent of, wow, less chance of getting snatched in Fort Myers now because they're not working with ICE. And that's not the message we want to send. The message is that we are a law-abiding community and we don't tolerate criminal behavior. But I think a vast majority are here to just provide for their families and have a better way of life. And so I feel for them who are going to get caught up in things. But by the same token, they did cross into the country illegally. And I think that the Secretary of Homeland Security has made it clear, you know, go back to your country and come in legally, and you will have an opportunity. If we have to send you home, you'll never have another opportunity to come back to our country legally. We've got to find a way to clean this mess up. For decades, it's the issue's been kicked down the road. The can's been kicked down the road. We have got to get firm and say, how do we make this work? How do we make sure that we are giving the right people the right opportunities?